On this episode of the Business Growth Podcast, I've got my fellow friend, my fellow burrito consumer, and buddy, AJ Wilcox, with me. As listeners, you may have checked out his earlier episode about LinkedIn, and the reason why AJ was on the past and he's here again is because there is no other person I would rather go to for getting the juiciest, the best stuff about LinkedIn than AJ. So welcome to the show.
Spencer, thanks so much. I'm just delighted to be here again for round two.
Yes, it's awesome. So there's a lot that's happened from we'll call round one to round two. It will bring people up to speed. A few things I'll bring up to speed on your end, just as the observer. Your company has grown quite a bit. You've hired on a lot more of experts on the team. Call them data scientists or whatever language you want to use. You've worked with a lot more companies. You've been speaking in a lot more locations throughout the world. But one thing that I've noticed is that you have a tighter relationship with the core company themselves. So bring us up to speed, and then we're going to dive into KPIs, organic marketing, and a bunch of other cool stuff.
Cool. Well, yeah, I think last time we talked, I had 1 employee, and now we're up to 5. So that's pretty exciting to see that growth. We have an office now for the first time. We've always been wholly remote, but we just opened up an office. So that's kind of cool. And yeah, from a relationship standpoint, something that you and I have been talking about offline quite a bit is we're starting a podcast, and it's going to be called the LinkedIn Ads Show. And in preparing for it, I have quite a few really cool interviews set up with LinkedIn's product folks, engineers, product managers. And as I'm thinking over it, I can't imagine any other podcast out there who gets that kind of access, I guess, to an ads team. I don't know of any Facebook or Google podcasts out there who are actually interviewing the people at Google or Facebook. So I am super stoked about just the level of access that I'm going to be able to give to my listeners on the conversations that I'm already having with these people, but just getting them out there so anyone can really be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, it's been, as you and I have spoke offline, you'll come back from LinkedIn HQ and you'll say, oh, this is something that's going to be happening in the future, or even just the insights of saying internally, this is how they think. And so maybe that's the first part of our conversation to have. Before we jump into when the first part would be the psychology, before we jump into the psychology, one thing I'd ask listeners to do is to stop and take a look inside the show notes. We'll put a link to AJ's podcast in there. So you can just click that button. Obviously, you're going to hit subscribe, and then you're going to listen to all of his episodes because they're going to be awesome. But let's talk. You get the psychology. You get that fly on the wall. There's something to be said from gurus and experts, but there's what actually happens at HQ and the way they think, the way they filter information. Help us understand where they're coming from so that we can play correctly with them.
Yeah, I think there's an element that is very expressly said, and there's an element that I pick up without it having been said, and they kind of conflict a little bit. So if anyone from LinkedIn is listening, please don't hold this against me. I'll try to tread softly, but what LinkedIn says overtly is the member comes first. And we do see this in the types of things they release. They never release a feature to us that would allow us to mercilessly spam their network. So they care about the member's privacy and feeling secure. So as opposed to something like if you're advertising on Facebook, you can just show up every single time one of your users or one of your targets opens up their newsfeed or as they're scrolling. On LinkedIn, though, they set a very specific limit that's like you won't be able to see more than one ad from an advertiser once per day. And so that's really the way they think about it is, hey, there's this new advertising feature we want to release. Oh, could it be seen as spammy or going too far or too aggressive? Okay, then let's not release it at all. And I've seen them cut really good ideas off of the table just for that. Then you've got the unspoken thing, which is advertisers have been telling them for, ever since 2007 when they released their platform, whoa, guys, this is too expensive. The costs per click are way, way, way too high. Costs need to come down. And they kind of redirect the conversation every time we bring that up to, well, prices aren't going to come down. So let's talk about giving more value for what you do get. And they are definitely pushing things forward there, but I see them do things that are um, potentially not intentional. I don't think they're purposely trying to deceive advertisers or squeeze every last dime out of them, but we do see things that feel like that with someone not telling you, you kind of get the feel that LinkedIn is trying to, rob you, trying to take every dime. Things like if you just go through and set up a campaign the normal way, it will set several options as default. One of those is automated bidding. Well, 90% of the time, automated bidding is more expensive than cost per click bidding. So we have to tell our customers and clients and confidants, hey, everyone, make sure you switch right as soon as you create the campaign back to what tends to be the cheapest option. But things like that I hope LinkedIn gets and understands, and they make more changes to try to show that maybe they're a more generous platform.
Okay, that makes sense. One of the things, because you and I have spoken about your podcast a lot, and one of the things that you mentioned as you created your podcast is that you're not positioning yourself or your company as like another internet marketing company.
Yeah.
You're positioning yourself as a vendor, a company that is helping these organizations that have integrity like LinkedIn has, and you're helping them grow. And I can see from LinkedIn's perspective that Facebook has become this place where a lot of info marketers and scams and everything else has overridden it. Whereas the quality in all these years, like it really hasn't dropped in LinkedIn. It's maintained itself, and it's become this playground where any of these scammers really they stick out as a sore thumb. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, very early on, LinkedIn made the conscious decision of, hey, all the other ad platforms started at 5 or 10 cents a click, and they just let competition drive the costs up as more and more advertisers came in. LinkedIn said back in 2007, we're going to set a floor so that you will always pay more than $2 per click, and then competition has driven up from there. And because of that, I mean, really, if you're a fly-by-night, you're a scammer, you're probably not going to be willing to spend that kind of money. You're going to focus your guns on a platform where you can get more volume for a lot cheaper. So they've done a good job of cutting out the belly fat ads. And now we're seeing costs per click in the $8 to $11 range quite often. So because of that, you really do have to have a pretty well put together business. You've got to have a great sales and nurture strategy and a great lifetime value of when you sell a product in order to afford, $8 per initial click.
Yeah, totally true. So I think that we're going to talk about KPIs before we jump into the KPIs, because that'll help us understand what to keep our eyes on. Let's talk about the organic world of LinkedIn, because a lot of people are, we have mutual friends like our friend Scott and Travis that are doing phenomenal on the organic side of LinkedIn. And then we have, companies and examples that we're seeing that are just crushing it with their ads. Talk about the organic side so that we can understand that landscape.
Yeah, LinkedIn is such an exciting network right now, and it is quite dichotomous. So everything we've talked about up to this point has been the ads network, where it feels like it's a very premium place to be. You've got to be all kinds of buttoned up. And then on the organic side, you have all kinds of people having tons of success for free. And it really is exciting. I mean, just like our friends have experienced, LinkedIn is the easiest network in the world to go viral on right now. And the reason for that is, in very technical terms, on LinkedIn, only about 4% of people are posting. They're bothering to write something and share it with their network. But 100% of people need stuff in their feeds when they log in. So LinkedIn goes, we've got to fill up their feeds with something. How about we fill it with social actions? So when I log in, I might see hey, Spencer Shaw commented on this. He liked this post. And then those posts would come into my feed. And then whoever's post that is, they're getting viral impressions. And I see this quite regularly where I'll post something out. I only have about 7,000 followers on LinkedIn, but I just had a post last week get 55,000 views. And if I only have 7,000 followers, why should 55,000 people be seeing my content? They shouldn't, but it's viral reach that because it was socially exciting to people and engaging, people wanted to engage, and then it got showed to their networks as well.
Okay. So I'm going to lightning round a couple questions to you. Long form content or short form content? What works better?
When you say long form, do you mean like a LinkedIn article, like kind of those
Yeah.
blog posts?
Long LinkedIn article, call it 400 words or more.
Yeah, I'm gonna go posts on this one. Posts are like lightning; they disappear after a few days, but they get a ton of views. If you go article, it'll live forever, but very very few views. So if you want just attention, posting.
Okay. And posting, have you found an ideal length that works?
Oh,
Well,
no, it really is like whatever is good and engaging works. I've seen very long posts work well, and I've seen very short posts work well. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about length. Just like, are you giving someone something that they want to like and comment on?
okay. We hear a ton of hype about video content. Like LinkedIn is just hungry for that stuff. Are we talking original type of videos or interview videos? What works best?
Um, the way that LinkedIn's algorithm works, a just a text only post will actually perform better than video in most cases. So if I have my choice, I'm going to say, do something that's just very, very organic, very conversational in text only. But when you start getting into videos, uh, really anything that's going to engage is going to work well. I just wouldn't stick to a single format for too long. If you came out with one that was like a talking head video of you teaching something and it did really well, if you come out and do the same thing again next week on a different subject, people will start to get bored and they won't tune in as much. So I would say don't stick to one format. Try to just change it up a whole bunch, and then you'll get a feel for what is it that you provide that everyone's going to be excited about.
Okay. How about frequency? What have you found to be working really well on the organic side?
Um, I like to post twice a week. I've heard quite a few organic LinkedIn experts who suggest posting more frequently than that. But quite honestly, I can't imagine being able to come up with that good of content more often than a couple times a week, at least for my business. But yeah, I'd probably recommend, go every business day if you can. Although I have had 2 posts now that I posted like really odd times over the weekend that happen to do really well. So, you don't even have to keep it during the business week.
Okay. All right. We sprinted on a few questions there. We're not out of breath. We got it. So let's skip over to the KPIs, because that's a world, once you understand the metrics of your business and the metrics of the campaigns, that's where you're able to understand how you can scale. So hope our audience understand. Maybe we have to start ground level and then work our way up.
Yeah. So from a ground level perspective, here's what you need in order to advertise on a social network. You need 3 things. And I remember the acronym AMO, AMO. It's your audience, your message, and your offer. So your audience is who it is you're targeting. So you break it down, your ads down into a persona. Your offer is really, what is it that I'm going to offer this person? Whether it's like, here, download this white paper, join this webinar, or talk to our sales guy. That's kind of how I think about offer. And then the message is however you package that, that offer to them. What imagery you use, what ad copy you use, maybe even what kind of ad format you use. So knowing that that's how you go into a LinkedIn ads campaign is a combination of those 3 things, you're going to get some really cool data back. You're going to get, and this won't be a surprise to anyone who's done advertising, you're going to get impressions, clicks, spend, and most likely conversions. When you know those 4 metrics, a few of them really, really stand out. So right out of the gate, you're going to have your click-through rate, which is your clicks out of how many impressions you had. On LinkedIn, if you're over like a 0.4%, so a little less than 0.5%, you're doing above average. Keep it up. But if you're over like 1%, which we see quite regularly, you are slaying it. You're knocking it out of the ballpark. So what you can learn from that is we have found a message that resonates with our target audience at a much higher than average rate. And conversely, if you're performing less than a 0.4% click-through rate, you've missed the mark. Something about your message is missing that clientele wholly. Then, after a few days of running ads, you'll have enough data to make your click-through rates statistically significant. But how good your ads are at getting someone to click does not tell the whole story. So what you want is to start getting is conversions from those clicks. So let's say we've run for 5 or 6 days and now we have 3 or 4 conversions. That means people have given us their information for whatever kind of offer we have. Now you can start saying, okay, we know that this offer converts. Let's give it a little bit more time and see what that conversion rate looks like. So if you have content, something that's like irresistible, you know you're going to get more than 15% of everyone who clicks converting. And that tells you you're doing a great job. If you have less than that, then you know it's either your landing page isn't communicating the value properly, or the offer itself isn't that interesting. You could get people to click, but they kind of change their mind before downloading. So right from the ground floor, within the first month of advertising, you should have your cost per conversion and your conversion rate. And that should give you a good idea of if you are on the mark and you're good at getting people into your funnel, or you're off the mark, you need to go and retool some things.
Okay. In order to get that benchmark, is there a certain dollar threshold that you've seen that people have to spend? Is it like, hey, once you allocate about $1,000, $5,000, 10, what is it?
Yeah, within the first, I'd call it $500 of advertising, you'll probably have statistical significance to your click-through rates. So if your goal is to find out what is my messaging to get people to engage, then that's all you have to spend to know that really for sure. But if you want to go all the way to conversions and know with 95% certainty, here is my conversion rate, here's the cost per conversion that I can expect, you probably want to spend somewhere between about $3,000 and $5,000.
Okay. And from what, we've talked about, on this podcast and other conversations, you're dealing a lot with higher ticket sales. Isn't that correct? Or at least something that's got a back end funnel.
Yeah. Basically, I tell people if you're not going to make $15,000 or more from the lifetime of a deal that you close, then LinkedIn's probably not a great network for you. The costs are higher and it sits more in the middle of the funnel. It's not like you're going to get people like search channels can right to a demo and buying now. So because of the higher costs and the fact that you've got to nurture a little bit longer, LinkedIn's really the network that you want to make sure that you've got a big deal size on the back end to make sure it's worth your time.
Okay. And for what types of businesses would it be not for if they check a lot of the boxes, meaning like they have some type of funnel or they have a high ticket offer? Are you seeing certain industries where you're like, dude, this just has not ever converted?
I don't know. I've seen about every industry do well if they're ticking the boxes. E-commerce, like it's really difficult from a LinkedIn ad to get someone to buy something who's a cold audience. So I would say any sort of e-commerce, probably not a good fit. And I normally say B2C, but we found like 4 different industries where B2C performs really well.
Mm-hmm.
B2B is obviously large deal size B2B, where your intent is lead generation. That's knocks it out of the park every time.
Yeah. But, like on the e-commerce, if it's a SaaS e-commerce, that works, but then you're not D2C, you're not direct to consumer e-commerce. So it totally makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
So going back, you mentioned the floor is at about a 0.4%, correct? Your average for click-through rates, if you're below about 0.4, you're not doing great. If you're above that, you're at least slightly above average. Okay. So as an agency, a team that runs a lot of ads doing this volume, I would imagine you're seeing an array. You're seeing some amazing sales copy and funnels that are just slaying it. And then you're seeing some that are right on the fence. So there are things that you've perceived over time where you say, hey, maybe we can tweak this offer a little bit, or it just makes sense just to cut it and do something different.
Yeah. Well, basically, we hold ourselves to a pretty high standard. So if we launch something and it gets less than like a 0.6% click-through rate, we're probably going to pause stop the presses, pause the ads, and try something new. We have found that, we have 2 clients who have the same kind of offer. Maybe they're both offering a webinar that's free to join. And one will get an 8% conversion rate and one will get a 35% conversion rate. And we're looking at, are the landing pages considerably different? Are the imagery, like what's different here? And 100% of the time it comes down to, oh, they really gave something to their audience that is truly irresistible. They gave them something of real value to get that 35% conversion rate. Whereas the one that's converting at 8%, they missed the mark. They put something out that they thought was interesting, but their customers are affirming, like they're voting with their lack of leads. That's not interesting to us.
Okay. So if that's the case, are you ever, running tests on the organic side and see something that works organically and then turn it into an ad campaign or modeling?
Yeah, we've got a couple clients who test out their offers first organically from their CEO's profile. They'll throw it out there. And this is actually a great test for any of you to run. Go onto your LinkedIn profile and say something like, hey, we're releasing this report or this ebook. Just comment below if you want us to send it to you. And you'll get a ton of people commenting. And like we talked about earlier, every time someone comments, it then shares that post out with a portion of their audience too. And so you'll get that viral effect. You will spend quite a bit of time clicking through everyone's names and getting their email addresses or connecting to them so that you can send them that asset. But you'll get a ton of interaction. And from that, you can tell, yeah, this really is an offer that people care about, or no one commented. I guess no one cares.
Yeah. But I mean, how much better is that to build, to go through and either build out a funnel with a lot of assumptions and then have nothing, or see something work organically and know that, hey, once you put some paid ads behind it, you can increase the revenue stream from there.
Yeah. And the other thing is, even if, let's say the report that you put together is really interesting, but it didn't get interaction organically. One of the first things you can try is, hey, maybe we just missed the motivation here. Like the information's good. Let's try changing the title to more specifically address maybe a different motivation. So if our motivation was like, here's a piece of content that's going to help you keep your job, maybe you don't look bad to your boss. Maybe we change that motivation to something aspirational, like you'll look like the hero if you get this information. And oftentimes we'll see that just changing the title of a piece can double, triple, or quadruple the conversion rates.
Wow, that's really helpful. The conversation that we're having today, it depends on who the listener is. I think this conversation is specific for listeners that do have a high ticket offer, or they're offering some type of, call it corporate offer. So anything that's in like the get rich quick, which typically is not this audience, or the e-commerce, which we have some e-commerce because I own an e-commerce company, realize that LinkedIn may be that playground for you. The one other part of LinkedIn that we didn't talk about, which is the relationship side of LinkedIn and the connectiveness. Can you share maybe a personal story or an example of some of the relationships, things that you have seen serendipitous moments on that platform, and maybe how listeners can create that?
Yeah, this is really interesting to me. I have two stories here I want to share. Number one is on the side of, ever since I had a LinkedIn profile, I've been at least somewhat active on it. I cared about conversations that were going on there and making sure that people I knew that we were connected. And I regularly got job offers and leads just from LinkedIn organically, and just assumed that was normal. That's just what happens when you have LinkedIn. And several years later, I started meeting people who would say things like, "Oh, I don't get anything from LinkedIn," and I'm going, "What do you mean you're not getting anything? I get leads all the time." And so that was kind of my first clue that, wow, there's something that maybe isn't totally obvious to the general public about how you're supposed to use LinkedIn. The analogy I like to draw is, think of using LinkedIn like an actual networking event in person. And if you send a connection request to someone that says like, "Hey, I was wondering if you're needing an overseas development team," that is the equivalent of like running after someone in a ballroom with your business card outstretched, like trying to jam it in someone's face. And in real life, you're going to get this reaction that's like, "Whoa, bro, chill." Yeah. And you get the same thing on LinkedIn. People will go, "That's aggressive," and they just don't respond. On the other hand, if you go up to someone and say, hey, so-and-so told me about you. I really wanted to meet you. We have commonalities, common interests here. And I'd love to run something by you, or I've got a couple questions for you about the industry that you're an expert in. That kind of approach in real life and on LinkedIn would work, fantastically well.
Yeah. So essentially you're saying play the long game in this world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. LinkedIn is all about relationships. And if you're just being the sales guy and churning through all of your connections, trying to get leads, you will see how quickly all of those work relationships that you've built over time just quickly evaporate. Definitely play the long game. Don't piss in your own oatmeal, as I crassly say. Yeah.
Yes. Well, this has been a fun conversation. It's really helped our listeners understand LinkedIn from a different perspective. It's really easy to hear LinkedIn at a local meeting or from a stage or on a podcast, and you're typically getting like the tips and tricks and whatever, but understanding how it's happening, what's really going on from the corporate side and also from the user side, from AJ's perspective of an agency that's running, is incredibly helpful. So one call to action to our listeners, either on your podcast player, type in LinkedIn ads show, or just look inside the show notes and we'll put a direct link to the podcast. So you can check out his interviews, and they're killer interviews. I mean, they're with people at LinkedIn. So you're going to get firsthand knowledge. It's not like, playing the game of telephone, from hearing this person that heard from this person that heard from that person's whatever that is. Yes. And then second, to get in touch with you, the best is b2linked.com. Is that correct?
Yeah. Just my secret is if you just go to the homepage and fill out the form on any of those pages, it just goes right to my inbox, and I'm not a sales guy. So feel free to reach out, ask any question you want about LinkedIn.
Awesome. Hey, AJ, it's a pleasure having you on here. I've been friends for a long time, ate a lot of food together, spent a lot of time together, and hopefully we're providing some value for the listeners today. Listeners, thank you for being on part of this podcast. We're doing this for you. Obviously, it's not paid. We're providing this so it helps you out as becoming better business owners. So thanks for being on the show with AJ.
Woo!